Now, we've been hearing a lot of problems, a lot of different fragmented solutions, and some really innovative kinds of ideas. We thought we'd save this one for last because I think it's going to give us a little more motivation to make changes and think outside the box. We got two presenters, and they work together pretty well. Jon Hoek is president of Summit SmartFarms, focusing on providing decision-ready information to production agriculture. Prior to joining Summit, Jon was vice president of pig production at Belstrup Milling Company. Jon has lectured on the topics of pig production efficiency and agritourism, both domestically and internationally. And Jason Toschlog is vice president of products at Flexware Innovation, technology integrator that focuses on helping forward thinkers in manufacturing industries build comprehensive and long-lasting solutions. You probably had a chance to meet these guys, but now you're going to see them in action. So let's welcome them. Vance and
thanks, Norm, and congratulations for the FBS group on a great conference. As a startup rookie, I guess, you come to these things and you hear confirmation of things that you thought in your mind were things you sensed. Things like farmers are human, and if you're going to change farming, you got to change the human. 62% of the people, or 62% of the farmers, don't rely on any management software, which talks about the opportunity, and 28% use paper for their primary storage. I thought that was pretty fascinating. And as a new startup, I come to appreciate, I think one of the speakers talked about, I learned some new terms, burn rate, and getting to cash flow as quick as possible and things like that. And so I really appreciate the insight and really the encouragement and the motivation here to continue innovating, because the industries do need it. And I'd also just a word or two about our partnership with Flexware Innovation. We had met about 2 years ago, and both our companies have a very similar culture, have a very similar approach to how we manage people, how we manage innovation, how we think, and we're just very blessed to be in that partnership with Flexware Innovation. So my topic today, Norm, can I do the slide? So in 2017, Summit SmartFarms was started in principle, and 2018, we had a meeting with about 10% of the U.S. sow herd at our office in Remington, Indiana, and asked the question of pig producers, what are the problems that need to be solved in the industry? Out of that meeting came human capital and decision-ready information. And I remember one large integrator came up to us and said, I've got all these barns, I have no visibility, I have no information. If you can give me decision-ready information, I'll buy whatever you're selling. And that's what started us on the journey. And some of our partners were there. Beringer, Dale Polson was a big part of that meeting. And so we started our journey in 2018. Wanted to talk about margin because margin is the ultimate goal. And this industry and startups and technology can be very fun. And I always say that we're going to talk about the shiny new syndrome, but sometimes barn visibility ends up being one of the best talking points at a cocktail party, but doesn't give you really margin. And so we focused our attention on going after margin, going after the cost of dysfunction, the $25 variation spread in cost of productions today. So in our agenda, we'll talk about how to harvest margin through integration. We'll talk about the current state as from our perspective, margin, which is the objective. We'll talk about the future state. We're going to kind of go back to the future. Jason's going to take us through the journey of manufacturing to some of the same analytics that we're looking at today in pig production or crop production. And then we've got an implementation blueprint that we're developing, and as we're talking to customers and potential customers about what it takes to really integrate to drive margin. So one of the things that we talk about a lot, and we hear this a lot, particularly around the context of sensors, barn control. I got so much information coming at me, I don't even know what to do with it. And so we love this quote by Herman Simon from Carnegie Mellon that talks about the wealth of information creates a poverty of attention. And so in our estimation, attention equals margin. And particularly in the pig business, sometimes attention has to happen in 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 12 hours, 24 hours. Something has to drive that decision and that attention, or there's going to be a margin, either a margin loss event or a margin capture event. So the current state of the industry from our perspective is in 4 buckets. There's a lack of trust. People that got to the pig business prior to us, I would say even those in this room, created a lack of trust. They overpromised, they underdelivered, and now we feel like that lack of trust is a bit of a barrier that we got to get through. There's an ambiguous business case. The amount of research to get empirical data to prove technology is time and cost prohibitive. It will happen. We all know it's there, because look at the rush to capital into ag tech, but it's not there today, and you're betting on what's to come. Sensory overload. It's a crowded space. I think one of the speakers put up the chart, and I'll put one up as well. 6,000 people are entering in the space. They all see evidence of the opportunity, but who do you choose? How do you choose it? What's the process? And then there's continuing, unrelenting margin erosion in all of our these systems, in our systems. John talked about that in crops and pigs, anywhere from $25 to $50 a pig. This type of technology development, in our estimation, will not survive on 10 to 15 cents per pig. It is going to take a robust value proposition to hire and to develop and to build infrastructure around product development. So, shiny new thing syndrome, which is actually a term, right, Jason, in the technology world, usually proposed by Enneagram 7s, right, Joe? Hey, we could do this, we could do that. And in our experience, that's what a lot of systems have been a part of, where you get a bunch of people in the room and they say, hey, we want to go this way, and hey, we want to do this, and we want to do this. Pretty soon they're $1 million into development, and it's fractured, and there is no value prop. So that's what's created a lack of trust. Ambiguous business case. One of the books that really impacted me in our startup journey is the book Digital Transformation. Why is digital transformation can be so frightening? Companies must shift their focus from what they know works and instead invest in alternatives that they view are risky and unproven. And we have, in a commodity business, it's very risk averse. And so we see this play out in technology, where companies are reverting back to manual systems instead of moving into automated systems because they're afraid of the outcome. And the space is crowded. Who do you choose? How do you choose them? Many of these companies from 2019 have already shifted into different buckets of development, even different segments in the farm, in the production process. And so there's a lot of moving parts. And who do you pick? Independently, it's our opinion that all of these companies alone will never create a value proposition that's going to be viable. It will take collaboration and integration to take what's being done here and convert it into a value proposition. And relentless margin erosion. I threw up a couple of slides from swine management system services. 78% conception to weaning survivability. If you go out to wean to finish, and this is actually a pretty decent number, I'm guessing, 6%, 4.5%, 6% in the bottom percentiles. So you end up with 26% conception to market loss. 3.42 pigs per pregnancy. And if you could capture $35 on those pigs, you got $120 a sow. That's just one example. You're never going to get the whole yield, but somewhere in our process, we've got erosion. So the future state, how do you cast a vision for capturing margin? Summit SmartFarms, one of our core values is to go outside of agriculture and look at solutions that have happened in manufacturing. And Jason Toschlog is going to come and talk about the Acumence journey to agriculture from manufacturing and some of the value propositions that they've learned in deploying Acumence in manufacturing. Because there's a lot of parallels that dovetail with pig production. Thanks, John.
Okay, so Flexware started over 25 years ago, and I was one of the founders of the company. So I've been in the trenches in this manufacturing industry for a long time. Got to live through that process and understand a lot of it. And there is a lot about what I see in your industry that parallels where manufacturing was 20 years ago. It doesn't mean that it's going to take the agricultural industry 20 years to get to where manufacturing is. I think it'll move much faster because the technology is easier to leverage and deploy. So 20 to 25 years ago in manufacturing, everything we installed was on-prem or in the factory to collect this data and manage it. It was much like you today. We've got lots of technologies, different products. They're like Lego blocks. They need to be assembled together to get business value out of them. And that's really where Flexware started. We saw that there is a gap between the financial reporting solutions in the space and the automation, sensors, and devices that existed inside of the manufacturing environments. To service that gap, you have to solve it with both technology combined with consulting. Because ultimately you're trying to solve real problems, real business problems. We talk about outcomes, we talk about creating value innovation. That requires somebody that can think across business processes as well as across technologies to be able to achieve that actual value. I can't see farmers today walking up to a technology company and saying, I need X, and I need Y from you and Z from you, and doing that integration themselves. There's too much work and effort there. So there has to be something that can pull all that together. And that was very similar to what we saw in manufacturing. So real quick on Acumence, and forgive me, this is going to be very manufacturing oriented. I'll try to draw parallels for your industry. But we started to create this platform back in that time frame to, first of all, quickly identify and determine the root cause of any downtime, quality, or productivity issues in the manufacturing process. So a typical manufacturing plant for these customers would have hundreds, if not thousands, of machines inside of a plant, all with having sensors and data coming in. And the idea of trying to understand all that and make meaning out of it is where we try to focus. And we always focused on the losses. Where are you losing efficiency, or you're losing product because of scrap? In a case where you had a manufacturer that was capacity constrained, meaning they could sell every product they produced, it was a multiplier on the value of the loss because you're getting to sell more product if you don't lose it. Not all manufacturers are in that camp. Some of them are not capacity constrained. They make things, but they're not sure they're going to sell it. But that's you guys are in a space where I think you are in that situation where you get the plus on the revenue. If you save an animal through that process, you're getting to recognize that revenue. So there's a plus factor there. Then the next step is prioritizing what you do once you uncover those losses or you're monitoring that data. So it's all about making it actionable is the buzzword that we talk about today. But unless you can take the information, only alert when it's meaningful, and then tell them what they need to do about it, that's when you can achieve the value. And sometimes those timeframes are in minutes, sometimes they can be in days, but the ultimate solution should understand what that time factor is. The other point there is that we always are constrained by the number of resources you have in any production environment to go solve problems. There's always more things to improve than what you have time or bandwidth to go do. So understanding which are your biggest issues, which cost the most, or which will create the most value are always important. And then finally, we found that just deploying and managing standards throughout these factories or organizations was a big part of this, because the complexity can get so high. So you have to find ways to make it simpler for people to be able to achieve value with these solutions. There we go. Let's see if it's working now. Yep. So what this solution space ended up being is the industry and manufacturing calls it a manufacturing intelligence platform, or enterprise manufacturing business intelligence. And it's the combination of being able to take this contextual information and provide the details needed to actually improve the process. So anytime you're a data or information provider, you're not really creating business value unless somebody takes action and actually improves the process. So one of the conceptual things that you want to build into a system like this is, first of all, defining when the problem occurred, defining how big of a problem it is. So that's your time to detect. You want to detect it quickly, but then you've got the time to correct. You ultimately want to correct it so that it never comes back again. You want to prevent it from happening again. So if your systems can, first of all, identify the problem, prioritize it for you to fix it, but also keep watching for it to come back to make sure that it doesn't come back, that's kind of a full cycle of being able to implement a best practice. You not only fixed it, you fixed it forever. And then the last part of that is institutionalizing that, making it a best practice and spreading it across all of your facilities, your farms. We've had the product out in the world for 16 years, 21 countries, lots of plants, lots of variables. Keep moving. The one thing that I find is you have to talk about business value. So we always have to align features in a solution with what can you get out of them. And ultimately, we got to take it further than this and talk about specific scenarios on how you're going to get value. So again, this is a manufacturing environment. This happens to be inside of the beverage can industry. This is one of the spots that the technology got deployed and the industry absorbed it. So beverage cans, you get Coca-Cola, Pepsi cans. Those plants are spread all over the world. The top 4 or 5 manufacturers have 80 plants around the world each, and they're all going after the exact same fillers. Pepsi, Coke, the beer industry. Margins are razor thin, and the manufacturing process is complex and very high speed. So every production line in those facilities is making 3,000 cans a minute. Everything's a blur in the process. It's running so quickly. And they'll have 5 or 6 of those lines in there. So to provide a solution that would actually create value there, The first one is the real-time plant status. And so you can replace the word plant with farm or barn. But knowing how I'm running, and when we think of it as an analogy of a scorecard, if you're playing a basketball game or a football game, there's a score that tells you how you're doing. You need a score that tells you what's the health of your process or what's going on. And the idea of being able to provide that at whatever frequency makes sense for the business. For the pig space, that might be once a day. For another space, that could be every 5 minutes. It depends on the actual operation. The next one is real-time key performance indicators. And a key performance indicator is different than status. It provides intent. It is aligned with your strategy. It should be some metric that everybody in your organization is heading towards. So we take KPIs seriously, and the fact that each business can configure a KPI that aligns with their strategy is really important. You want to be able to change behavior with KPIs. You want to be able to have culture aligned with them. You don't do that well, you can create all kinds of bad behaviors. If you're incentivizing people to do things based on different metrics, you can get bad things happen. Next two, downtime and spoilage. Downtime means whatever my asset is, my machine, or it could be a resource, a tool, it could be a person, they're not available. So I'm down, I'm not being productive. Spoilage is like scrap. It could be considered mortality in the pig industry. It means I've lost that product for some reason. So we obviously want to understand that and all the dynamics there. The rest I won't go through in detail, but you get the idea that there has to be these features that the solution provides. They have to be tied to specific benefits that you can ultimately achieve. I think it's always easier to talk from case studies. So this is going way back to 2006, and Wrexham was one of the large can manufacturers. They were the first ones to adopt these platforms and roll it out globally. And we'll just talk a little bit about some of the value that they saw in this type of solution, because I think it applies across all industries. Let me skip a couple pages here. We'll just go to this back one and zoom in. So down here at the bottom, it says the Acumence product was deployed in all of their North American sites, one site in Mexico. Up above, the rollout has gone global. 15 plants in Europe and Asia are targeted, with 10 now running in 2006. And here's the first value. That itself provided insight to contrasting operations approaches. So the first value of putting in these solutions is to be able to internally benchmark and compare how you're doing across farms, across barns, across different assets. And we talk about variation by benchmarking from company to company, but just benchmarking internally will show a lot of variation as well. What we find is that the people in the organization are trying to do things and do them well and innovate and change the way they do things. They all think they're doing it the best way, and they may or may not be. But as soon as you can identify what that best way is and replicate it across the process, that's what you're trying to achieve. And you want the technology to help you identify which of those best practices are really good, and then verify that you've implemented as a best practice. I'm going to skip this last part here. So since you guys are focused on the financial side in a lot of ways, the idea is to capture information from the PLC. So think of that as controllers. It's the smart devices. It could be your smart tractor or whatever within the factory. Get that information into SAP, which is their financial system in this case. That way we eliminate the non-value added processes. The effort to collect all the data manually to be able to support an effort like this can be tremendous, and you've got to integrate in an effort to streamline and automate that. The article does talk about the fact that, again, every data technology does not get the value unless you actually do something with it. So we have to enable the humans to make improvements in the process, and you have to verify that improvement is real. So at the very end here, they're saying, yet the credit for all ensuing ROI must be shared. Without Acumence, it wouldn't be possible to piggyback on this solution. So the idea that we could quantify losses, implement best practices across everywhere is really the secret sauce. And in this industry, as we talk about sensors and technology and platform, you can't continually demonstrate the value, that'll be the demise of the players in the space. When we talk about 6,000 companies not making the chasm, what we saw in manufacturing is if you couldn't demonstrate value either directly or through a set of partnerships, you wouldn't exist because there's not enough margin in the space to support things that don't actually create value. This is another case study. So this was 6 years later. Roche Diagnostics, they make the glucose strips for monitoring blood sugar, and they also make the technology to visualize that information. So this one is an interesting one. They had some new operational leadership, and they said they want to be world-class, and they wanted to really change the culture of the company. So if you're in the regulated space, whether it's pharmaceuticals or med device, you're constrained by regulations, and you have a huge quality organization inside your business, and they trump everything else. They make the rules, even at the expense of extreme inefficiencies in the process. And so the new operational leadership were in charge of breaking through that space. They were profitable, but they knew that they were going to have competitors coming in the near future, and they had to innovate. And so at the same time, they wanted to change culture, and they wanted to create a culture of accountability. You cannot have accountability without measuring the outcomes of whatever it is you've set out to accomplish. And their problem was they could make a leadership decision that we're going to improve this or improve that, but they didn't know where they were starting. And so if they said we're going to improve by 5%, what does that mean? How do you know? And so part of this was establishing where you are, then assigning goals for improvement, and it's continuous improvement. So how do we keep growing? And so with these technologies, we went through a process we call it business value mapping. So we defined all of the key performance indicators that they wanted to drive their business with, and we prioritized those. We summarized it with the top 5. And we put real financial numbers to it. So if we're going to improve, in this case, yield by X%, what does that create for us? And they had to quantify that. In their case, this is a very lucrative manufacturing environment. 1% yield improvement over the life cycle is worth $19 million per year. So this was a solution that paid for itself in 2 months. It was that kind of a solution. But again, we're providing the data. They had to continue to improve with the data. But you can get a feel for yields. We went from 82% to mid 90s, and the charts you're seeing are actually part of the technology. So that's another part of adoption is the technology can't just be this other thing that you're using. It has to be integrated into your business processes. So how they would change, so every manufacturing supervisor would have a morning shift meeting before they started the shift to start producing things. They used the data, the one version of the truth. They would have a dashboard that would drive their priorities for that shift. So the data became part of their normal routines and business process. It wasn't just something you could go view, it was integrated. One of the other ones was scrap costs. So actually rejecting material and scrapping it. These strips are actually made of gold and platinum. There's all kinds of precious metals inside these strips. So scrap loss is a big deal. So you can see some metrics about moving there, over 90% reduction over time. The interesting part about this, though, is this is lead time. So this was compressing the time it takes to make a product. So in this case, they were trying to optimize their supply chain. What that meant to them is that they had a bunch of suppliers providing them the raw materials, and they had distribution chains where these materials had to go downstream before it ultimately made it to the customer. And they went to the distributors and said, we're going to reduce our inventory. Our inventory costs are too high. The distributor said, no way. You guys are not predictable enough. There's no way we're going to let you reduce the inventory volume. They went to the suppliers and had basically a similar conversation. So step 1 is they collected the data internally and started improving. Step 2 is they started sharing the data with their supply chain to prove that they had the ability to manage now these reduced inventory levels. And this lead time was part of that effort. If I can compress the number of days it takes to produce my product, then I can get there. Okay, and this is the one I was starting to jump to. You can see that they started out, when they started measuring, it took them a couple years to even measure this. OEE is an industry metric. It's it's ubiquitous across all manufacturing environments. The target is different per industry, but it's an efficiency metric. It stands for overall equipment effectiveness. It has three components. One looks at the availability of your equipment and assets. Another looks at the performance. How fast am I running versus ideal rate? And the third is quality. Am I scrapping components or losing? Do I have loss because of that? They integrate into a single metric that the whole manufacturing industry can look at. And when we started talking to them, they were in this roughly 50% OEE. And what they said was they were best in class in the industry. And in these regulated industries, that was true. If you consider yourself a regulated company, that 50% seemed to be, top of class. And they hired a new production manager from outside who wasn't in that industry, and he was challenged to break through that. It was like, we've all set the bar so low for ourselves. Everybody in the regulated industries patting themselves on the back that we're doing well. Somebody's going to eat our lunch. And so when we went in there, they thought they were already as good as they could get. And you can see that over time, they're trending up towards what would be world-class across all manufacturing clients. And I think it takes some of that kind of thinking that sometimes we can talk ourselves into the fact that we're already there, we're already the best, but there's always additional value that you create. All right, so I'm gonna transition back to John, but the idea there is just to draw some of the parallels between manufacturing and this industry. And I think what you guys will see is that you don't have to reinvent the wheel. That a lot of the things that you guys are trying to accomplish in this space exist in some of these adjacent industries that are production oriented.
Thanks, Jason. And I will move into a bit of a vision to move forward with. And there's 5 pillars that we talk about. Faith in the outcome. Jason's partner, Scott Whitlock, said at the threshold, I guess, of the chasm in manufacturing execution systems, there had to be some faith in the outcome. And one of the things we wanted to do was set the stage for what happened in manufacturing as a vision for what the potential is in agriculture. You have to find an integration partner you trust. Trust in this space is paramount. Trust is what allows us to work with partners that Kaylee, I'm glad she brought up the swim lanes. We talk about swim lanes all the time, and you have to have a high level of trust that your partners aren't either running ahead, away, or you have to have a high trust environment to do that. You have to have a high trust with your customer as well, because there is an element of trust that you'll not lead them down a path that they've experienced before. You have to have time to pilot it, and that time allocation or investment is from the potential customer. There has to be co-investment. Generally, in manufacturing, as companies rolled out technology, it did not all fall on the customer, and it did not all fall on the developer. And so we put some cooperative models together for that. And it has to involve convergence of competition, which gets back to trust. So when we talk about convergence of competition and integration, there are all kinds of potentials for APIs, for data flowing in and out. And we think that there's potential for larger system platforms to even collaborate. And none of us are going to get every single customer. None of us is going to be the single platform. And so we just, these are some of the folks that we're working with. We've got a really good relationship with Behringer and with the Farmera team. Realm, we've been working with Realm for almost a year and a half now. Love that relationship. We're talking to some of the integrations of data with MetaFarms, with Colorado Swine Data, PigChamp, and so AP, working with AP. All of them have visions of where they want to carve their niche, but collaboration and building trust with each of them is something that's very important to us. So how are we deploying Acumence in the pig wean to finish side? I'll share a few slides of what Summit SmartFarms' vision is for harvesting margin. Our two pillars are equipping people and optimizing results. And we have a target to drive $5 of value or $5 of increased margin by 2026. And I'll walk you through where we think that's going to come from. And that's through the entire value chain, farrow to finish. We think there's anywhere between $1 and $4 of value in breed to wean sites through increased efficiencies, reducing variation, increasing organizational health. And we do have some empirical data on those numbers. This is a project we did with the Mashoff organization, 3 years of HR data generated in a Power BI tool that we built called Smart Team. And we looked at the impacts of HR data because as we talk about labor, as we talk about the value of labor and the cost of turnover, and we hear all those numbers, but nobody has got empirical numbers on what is that. We think a 30% turnover in a 5,600 sow farm is almost 60, 70 cents a pig. By the time you look at efficiency losses and losses in because you have about 80% efficiency for 2 years out on an employee, according to the Society for Human Resource Management. So you basically got your whole farm running at 80%. So in this case, when we had tenure go up 0.65, which represents about 8 months on a site, our cost per wean pig decreased by 41 cents. And in this particular case, it was a $1.3 million value. And we do have that on turnover as well. Turnovers, I believe it was somewhere around 36 cents. And so we're halfway almost to our $2 a pig. On the wean to finish side, small moves equal very large numbers. $1.35 in grade A pig increase, or a 1.35% in grade A pig increases, 0.1% increase in average daily gain, catastrophic event prevention, and supervisor efficiency. You can get to $2.95 fairly quickly. So in our development, we have put together an Acumence, something that's similar to the OEE number, and it's called EPQ, and it's a single point of where information lands to give a prescriptive direction to a supervisor or assistant. So the E stands for environment and sensor control, and I would, before I get into the EPQ, it's a very basic metric that will grow more robust over time as more sensors and more contextual data comes in. So E is for environment. We harvest sensor data to look at optimal environmental conditions for pigs. P is production. That will include feed, water, and other production metrics that would come in. And Q is around quality, mortality, grade A pigs sold, and processor performance. We create a proprietary recipe that runs in the background to formulate the index. Our dashboard, these are actual barns in Iowa and Western Illinois. They're phase 1 of we've started phase 2 of implementation. By the end of November 15, we should have about 250,000 pigs on Acumence. And what you're seeing, the bar is the percentage of efficiency to ideal. And so when a caretaker wakes up in the morning and says, where am I going to go? he may or she may look at anything under 80, over 80% is not priority, and the prioritization goes to the barns that are at a lower percentage. We do have ways to toggle the EPQ and separate it and drill down. When you click on each site, you'll get the room level view with the dashboard of where the percentages are in that particular barn, and then it drills down into the weeks post weaning performance in a lookup at the bottom of the room detail information. This number here today is a real-time number, and the number on the dashboard is toggled by 30, 60 days, or you can drill down into the previous week. So what does it take for integration? An integration blueprint, and I'm going to ask Jason Toschlog to come up again and go through this. But as we looked at integrating with larger systems and producers, there's always an IT infrastructure conversation, and then there's a synergistic tech platform conversation where I believe Aaron mentioned that everybody puts themselves at the center of the hub. And I don't know that we have a problem with who's at the center of the hub at all. And it might be a competitor, it might be us, but we might be working together in the background. And so, but it takes an architecture of IT to do that. And Jason will walk through that here in the next few slides.
So there's too much detail on these slides to go into everything, but I want to talk about it at a high level. Again, going back to manufacturing. 20 years ago when we started this, we talked about all the technologies were Lego blocks, different products, and as an integrator, you developed a competency at plugging those Lego blocks together in a way that would make things work. But there was no standardization in the industry, and the ISA organization is who stepped up in manufacturing to be the one that defined this. And we were talking about your industry is segmented by whether I'm crops or whether I'm this animal or another. In manufacturing, the segmentation was twofold. One was the industry that you're in, but also was the process type. So this ISA standards organization, they conceptually conceived that there are these three fundamental process types. You've got continuous process, you have batch, and you have discrete. And the way you control those processes are fundamentally different and may drive different technologies in each one of them at that level. But above that, it's standard across those. And then most manufacturers would have combinations of those different process types inside their facility. So it drove the thought process that there's a fundamental layering of technology that should happen. In combination with that, there's something called the Purdue reference model, where they said there's a natural hierarchy that exists for all information systems that are trying to control production, and there's rationale for why it exists. One piece of the rationale is the timeframes in which these information flows need to happen or respond or react. So when you're closer to the process, if I'm turning on equipment like an auger, or I'm sensing something, I need to do that very, very quickly. I need to, the time between when the sensor understands something and the controller reacts, that needs to happen very quickly. At the very, very top, I've got business processes that might be planning on frames of once a month, or it could be daily, but that's a different time horizon. But that doesn't mean that there's not integrated information flows between all of these. So what these standards ultimately said is that fundamentally, if you're a production-oriented process, and that could be manufacturing or it could be agriculture, you're going to have a standard set of information flows. You're going to have a standard set of functional pieces. You may choose to solve those functional pieces with people and manual processes, or you may leverage technology. But if you're solving business problems, you have to think about the information flows crossing these boundaries to ultimately be successful. So what we've seen as some of the newer waves of technology, like the Internet of Things, have come about, is that there's almost a naive thought that some of these technologies can do things that in spaces that they shouldn't be in. So we have a lot of people approach Flexware just to talk about innovation ideas. So there was a startup that got huge amount of money. They were building an IoT solution to monitor the status of equipment in manufacturing facilities. So they're doing what we've been doing for 20 years. And we reviewed what they were planning to do, and we said, that's not going to work. And they didn't believe us. They went off, and 2 years later, they came back, and the company ultimately folded. And the issue is that they put their IoT sensors in the plant, and they could tell you when something was up and down, but they had no contextual awareness of whether that machine should be up and down. Was it planned maintenance? Was that work that just didn't plan to run at that time? So it's all the other business knowledge that has to be integrated in with the sensor data. And I think you guys spoke to some of the same things. If you can't integrate those, you can't solve the problems. Likewise, an IoT sensor is great for analytics. It probably shouldn't be included in your control loop if there's a safety issue there. If I need to turn something off, if somebody sticks their hand in a machine, I don't want that to go to the cloud and back to decide whether to do that. So there's a time horizon for all of these information flows. And so there's a process. It's a process of just understanding your business and your information flows and categorizing which ones have to happen quickly, which ones can be more slow, which ones need to have dollar signs tied to them. There's a lot of things we can do in the control layer that we don't ever need to understand what the dollar impact is. But if we're trying to assess margin and loss, we need to be able to integrate with actual dollars to understand what that cost is so we can prioritize. So right now, the way we built the Acumence platform is really to service a couple of things. First of all, it has to do some of these fundamental things really, really well. The fundamental thing is get data from anywhere, and also be able to do something meaningful with it. The two most meaningful things we can do with it is, number one, understand when we need to alert someone. There's nothing worse than a nuisance alarm that people immediately shut off and quit looking at. So only alerting people when it's valuable, again, having the contextual awareness of knowing the age of the pigs and how many are in the barn, when the temperature is a certain level, only then can I know whether that's important enough to alert someone. The next step is, once you alert someone, you got to give them the information to take action. So if I get that alert, I click on it. The first thing I need to do is have more information that tells me, okay, how big of a deal is this? Can I understand it? Do I have enough information to look at it? Does it need to be one report, or do I need to be able to slice and dice and do some things ad hoc to understand what's going on? And then finally, if you're really sophisticated, you close the control loop, and that you actually make a change that improves whatever's going on. That may mean physical activity, or that may be an informational change to make that happen. But that's at the fundamental level. That's all Acumence is. It's a connector of these things. It has a fundamental data model underneath it that allows me to glue contextual information across multiple systems. So in manufacturing, we would have an ERP system like SAP or Oracle or Microsoft Dynamics or whatever. It would house master information about the products we're producing, the resources that we're leveraging, the master production schedule. I have to be able to glue that master contextual data with the information down below. So being able to glue that information together is important. It also has to orchestrate communications in this space. So we've talked about as a team a lot is that everyone's creating APIs. And I've used the analogy with some of the teams here. That's like having your mailbox. That gives you the ability to receive messages and to send things out. But if there's not a FedEx guy that actually is coming and picking up the data and moving it somewhere, you can't optionally, or you can't completely solve those problems. You have to have somebody that's actually sending and quarterbacking the messages. And so what we found in our space is sometimes Acumence is doing that, sometimes other systems are doing it. Again, that's part of the ecosystem, but somebody needs to be able to do that for certain things. Layering the technologies in these layers is another way of looking at this. We would not look at something like Acumence as driving the financial transactions between something like FBS and banking. Acumence is built to really think about the world from a production perspective, not from a financial transaction perspective. it's actually technically possible. The Acumence technology could be leveraged to do anything on any layer. It's just about focusing on what your core competencies are and doing what you do really, really well is what's important to us. All right, John, you want to talk about?
Yeah, that was just.
Is that your final slide?
Our final slide.
Okay.
The attention has to be the market, and I don't know that we know how that. I don't know that we know today empirically what that is, but we all know it's there, and so I think that's been a little bit of the aversion to technology integration that we see, that there isn't a lot of appetite for risk now, although this past year it's gone up with producers, but so that's our review of Acumence, and love to take any questions, Norm, if there was any.
Good question. And I think there's a chat. So let me see. Up here and see what that. The slide, the integrated ecosystem, is helpful. Helps me envision how many of those sensors, systems, and software connect. So,
Yeah, you know, early on, as we looked at integration, I didn't show the slide, but we have a what we call, it's kind of our pyramid, and the foundation of the pyramid is the C-suite alignment and the leadership alignment. You have to have alignment with the business leaders that it's the business value is going to be there. The second area is barn visibility, and I think if you look at where a lot of folks are trying to enter, I was talking to a producer in Ohio, and he was being approached by a visual weighing company, and he says, I don't know, you know, I could put it in, but what do I do with it? What do I do with the information that comes out of it? And that's where this whole ecosystem comes. It alone, all these technologies are really hard to derive business value, but when you put that together with water, with feed, with lagoon levels, with health information, well, then it creates the context for understanding where the margin's at. Joe?
Question for Jason. So you've been working on integration and manufacturing for years and years and years. Did you ever get, quote, done with a plant where you completed integration and then it was done forever and you never had touched again? Or is there always more things you're bolting on and adding?
Yeah, most. In rare cases, there's a manufacturer that doesn't change. They make the same product for 20 years and they seem to make money. That's very, very seldom. So it's not that you're never completely done. There's always ways to innovate. Plus, there's always changes to your processes and your businesses that are always going to come in and impact it as well. So I would also say that because the technology is always evolving, if you circle back around every 5 years, there's new opportunities to do things. John just mentioned visual weighing. So, you know, counting and weighing pigs is hard to do, right? There's several companies that we know right now are trying to solve that with vision systems to be able to do that. Once that's available, that can be a huge factor in this. You know, a lot of what BI and Summit are trying to do is, if you're assessing the pig's health and how its rate of gain, but you ultimately never know its weight. It's like it's the thing you're trying to predict and control, but you never know. That's kind of a self-defeating battle, right? So some of those things will then change the game and allow you to get that much better. But I think in manufacturing, we've always called it continuous improvement, and every technology that we create is enabling continuous improvement. You need to have a culture of continuous improvement. It has to have that mindset that I'm always going to try to get better because somebody else is getting better. So, does that answer your question?
I would add to that,
Joe, we sat down with a large group, and as we were explaining the development process, one of the guys said, boy, if you could do feed, and if you could do this, and if you could do this, and if you could do this, we'll buy it, right? And so I think that there's a mindset change that has to happen in our industry around, it isn't never done. And you got to start somewhere. And it's the journey that ends up adding all those contextual pieces that build the value proposition. But nobody's got the money to come with a solution that says, boom, here, this is all you need. It's going to integrate your feed mill. There isn't enough money in the world to do that. And so it's an iterative process.
Yeah. Add to that, in the manufacturing space, we ended up coming up with this maturity model where we would assess a particular customer's current maturity level from a technology and business process perspective. And when they would ask us to solve certain problems, we would have to coach them that they're not ready for that yet. You need to get past step 1 and 2 before you get there. A practical example, Carrier Corporation, they make refrigeration systems, and they have assembly lines with hundreds of people on the lines. And they make all the Carrier models, but they also make brands for all the other vendors that are labels that you see. They make almost all, there's like 2 main manufacturers of refrigeration equipment, and then they put all the different brands on them, just like all the other appliances in the market. So they ask us for a system that automated when a unit went and got started on the line, it would have a serial number and a model number to say exactly how it was going to be built. And as it went down the line, it would get certain features, different motors, electronics, it would get different kinds of insulation, etc., custom built for that serial number or model as it moved through. And they said, well, we want you to do the serialization and tracking, so we want you to track everything that goes through here. We want you to track the quality attributes to make sure we're building this correctly. And we also want you to error proof it. So if somebody puts the wrong part on, we want you to stop the line and alert them. And that's where we had to say, okay, you just crossed a maturity level. So the first couple things, putting the label on it, we know what the order is, we know what this should be, we can slap that label on and say what its serial number and model number is. Easy, that's maturity level 1. Tracking what's going on, collecting some data, that's level 1. As soon as you introduce error proofing, everything has to be right. So the reason why we said we can't do that yet is we knew that their master data, in this case, the information about when you assemble a product, you have something called a bill of material, which is every piece of technology or part that goes into that final assembly. Their data was always wrong. And every time there was an engineering change to make an enhancement, it would take weeks to get that documentation updated and the system updated, but they were already in production a day later. So they were running production before their systems had caught up.
That's like
Okay. Well, so you think about that. If I'm day 1 trying to run that, the first thing I'm going to be working off bad data, I'm going to stop the production line. It's going to say you can't run, and supervisors are going to be looking around. What's going on? It ends up just being a data problem. So the maturity level is your ability to own technology, your ability to supply the information required for these information flows to actually be enforced. So I think all those are important as well.
Anything online? So let's go ahead and thank these gentlemen.